You want me to just go ahead and share it so you can?
It was the right one. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Everybody in the chat. Hey, JL, Patrick, Charlie, back again. Back again. This one's tough, huh?
Very.
Oh, very.
This one was a fun one. It really, really was, and because it afforded some
JL.
What?
It's JL. Of course, it was fun.
I love these because it's nice to be able to go out and try and do interesting things with such a short video. Do interesting things editing wise. So I've learned as much, like trying new stuff to try and edit videos, edit my presentations and make them solid, as opposed to like the typical, editing that you have to go through when making, created content. It's like, okay, we're pretty much about timing and everything. But this one is like, I can do creative, fun stuff and do pop-up, that's what I really love about it. This makes it a lot of fun.
It was good. It was good. I love watching you do it. When you first mentioned this to me, my heart sank because I was just like, oh, because I have a confession. I'm a wuss. Everybody knows I'm just a wuss. Like this kind of stuff. Like I'm just like, oh God. But I did my best. I researched. I did what I could. But on that, I don't know. Who wants to go first? Actually, I don't know. How is everybody in the chat? Like, are you okay? Like, and if you're not okay,
why?
do what you got. Do what you got to do to be okay. Like, it's one of those sorry not sorries. We have to do this anyway. We're just gonna be talking about these just wonderful, well, horrible, actually horrific ways to go because that's like the challenge.
Like I said, this one was wild. It just kind of popped into my head because when we were talking about discussion, when we were discussing in the Twitter chat about like what we should do next, and so I was kind of like, what would be interesting, and it was coincidental. And I at the moment, like when we were talking about it, we had just over at Week in Horror, the podcast, we had just talked about Final Destination 5. And so I was like, the Final Destination franchise was on my mind. So I was like, oh wait, what was like the worst way to go? It's like, what would be the worst way? So I was like, and I just threw it out there as kind of like, how about this one? We don't have to do it. Maybe it could be a back pocket thing, but I threw it out there. It was like everyone was like, oh, that would be interesting. So this was a nice journey through like the gruesomeness of human imagination, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
It definitely fits the word challenge. Like it was a challenge. I don't know about you guys, but for me, it was a challenge. It really was.
Safe to say a small departure from our other stuff because we don't necessarily have to be from a movie. Could be from your darkest imagination.
Yes, when we put it out, just to let everybody know in the chat also, this is probably a good premise before we start showing them. We decided like we're going to talk about the worst way to die, but you could use anything to support it. You could use a series, movies, anime, any kind of story. You didn't actually have to pull like a specific type of media to do it. You could use a song. You could use anything. It was wide open, which in a way made it better and worse for me. Because all you have to do is give me too many options, and like I'm gone for weeks. Like, what? Since it was your idea, JL, do you want to go first?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can do mine first. just in being creative with this, and it appears the live chat point up, we're getting some feedback somewhere.
Okay, I'm gonna let me just check here. I turned your background thing off. Let me put this one on. See if that helps. That
Much
helped.
better.
Yeah.
That's better. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
it
Good
was
job.
some hum. Yeah, I took care. Look at the bear doing tech. Holy crap! And it worked. Yes,
So
that's a win right there. I'm a winner today.
The stream went down, Claire. Just kidding.
What?
Nah. So
Broken Google.
I want
Charlie,
to
you're
give
gonna pay for that later. Sorry,
I
go
want to
ahead.
give some fair warning in attempting to be creative with this, and be creative with the editing of like this. The opening of my vid, the opening of my presentation, I don't know. I think I've edited it as best I could, but I'm giving fair warning. If something happens with the stream, everybody in the live chat right now, if it does go down, it will come back up. So you don't have to worry about that, and then we can carry on from there. If it happens, I don't think it will, but just in case, there's fair warning because I tried to, but I pushed this one kind of. I think I kind of towed the line on this one, so just fair warning. So
In translation, JL pushed it, and we're gonna have to see if it goes
I
through.
kind of did. So
Okay.
but here we go. Mine is shared up. So yeah, if you want me to go first,
all right. I'm gonna
having
put it. I'm gonna
having
pull
won the
it
last two.
full screen. If the stream goes down, please let us know in the chat because we won't know. Like last time, we just continued up here talking away, and thankfully it all got edited back in. And it kind of sounds weird, us all complaining about the stream being down.
Yeah, put JL first so he's
Yes.
furthest from the voters' memory because he's on a bit of a streak.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, well, no, because he is memorable, so that's really not going to help much. But okay, here we go.
I have a rendezvous with death. At some disputed barricade. It may be he shall take my hand and lead me into his dark land and close my eyes and quench my breath. I have a rendezvous with death. And I to my pledged word am true. I shall not fail that rendezvous.
Death. Charlie Welch said, "Oh hell, what did it go down?"
I'm looking at the StreamYard, and
He's muted. I don't see it. I see it
Frozen.
paused. Did you pause?
Okay, just checking. I
Oh,
paused
you
it.
did it. Okay.
I paused
Yeah.
it because Charlie said, "Oh hell," and I want to make sure it didn't go down. Okay, fantastic.
Oh,
We should be
we're
good.
just all Helen because it's so good, JL. Just play. Just play.
Okay. The ultimate equalizer. No, not you. Not you either. Yep, that's the one. As one of the few absolutes, death holds a permanent place in the back of our minds, its shadowy tendrils pushing and pulling throughout each moment of our lives. And because we will never know exactly when or what will make that one tug the final one that pulls us into that forever abyss, death itself presents a profound power over us, a power that can push us to our absolute limits or completely freeze us in our tracks, as it lurks just over our shoulders and leers at us with that skeletal smile from deep within the unknown. The very concept itself has its own sort of gravity, so it's no wonder that humans spend an inordinate amount of time obsessing about it, though not just on death itself, but on all the means and manners in which one can shuffle off this mortal coil. From gentle to hilarious to utterly gruesome.
You, our coat.
Thinking about how we will die is something that often chills people straight to their bones, some of them preferring the idea of a dream that painlessly ceases, some seeking glory and honor at any cost, and some who wish only to ensure, regardless of the method or means, that how they go out is solely on their terms. So the real question that must be asked is, what is the worst way to die? I'm fairly certain that anyone who has ever been asked this question has dreamt up some nightmare scenario in which they meet their demise. All of their worst fears churn together into a squeezing, choking miasma of torment as death punches the unsubscribe button on their life channel.
See you real soon.
But in all of these imagined scenarios, are any of them actually the worst way to go? To really answer this, we only need reference two things: the devilish creativity of the movies and the bare-bone facts of human anatomy. Certainly, the cinema has given us many variations of everyday basic ways to go, such as falling, burning, crushing, electrocution, disease, freezing, or even being struck by a vehicle. But we can easily do better than that. We can take a look at what nature could have in store for us, such as bears, sharks, birds, crocodiles, the weather, and even bees. Oh, but then there's the horrors of what we humans do to each other. From a historical perspective, we have boiling alive, being fed to ants, the infamous blood eagle, and that old tried and true Roman method, crucifixion. Or we could take into account what we do to each other today, like shooting, stabbing, poison, bombs, and of course, torture. But no matter how savage the means, the question really remains as to just how much the body can take before it simply shuts off. There's only so much pain or blood loss one can experience before their heart literally infarcts, and there's only so much fear one can experience before simply passing out. So if the manner of death is so scary that you simply pass out, or it does so much damage that you bleed out and are gone in moments, then I would hazard to say that it's not actually the worst. So given this, we can determine that the worst possible way to go would be one that maximizes the amount of pain without inducing cardiac arrest, while also maximizing the fear response without inducing unconsciousness. And when you take those two things into consideration, there really is only one worst way to die. And it's not being eaten alive by piranha, being tossed headlong into a wood chipper, or even being bifurcated pubis to pons with a rusty hacksaw. The worst possible way for one to meet their demise is death by drowning.
Oh my God.
Now I can hear some of you say, death by drowning? Seriously? JL, you literally mentioned bisecting a living human being from their hoo-ha to their brainstem with a rusty hacksaw, and then you say that drowning is worse than that? And the answer is yes, and the reasoning behind this lies in our understanding of the human fear response. This is the amygdala. It is a paired structure that lies within your temporal lobe and is a part of the limbic system. While the amygdala plays a smaller role in both learning and memory, its primary role is in emotional control and processes. And the biggest part of that job is threat assessment and fear management. Through scientific testing on patients with damaged amygdalas that seemingly made them incapable of feeling fear, it was formally concluded that the best way to induce a fear response in these individuals was to increase the CO2 content of their bloodstreams. Even with a non-functioning amygdala, the increased CO2 in their bloodstreams induced a state of absolute panic, as their brains signaled to their bodies that their oxygen levels were dangerously low, triggering an adrenal response that made them fight like hell to get more air. But something strange occurred. When the same CO2 experiments were done on people with functioning amygdalas, their fear response was diminished. And the conclusion that came from this was a recognition of the amygdala's role in recognizing external threats. Without an external threat, the patients recognized that they were in a safe, controlled environment, and so their amygdalas actually limited their fear response. But when an external threat exists, such as the water all around you, cutting you off from the precious oxygen you need to survive, while the CO2 levels in your bloodstream, a byproduct created by your cell's aspiration of glucose and the oxygen from your last breath into ATP, slowly increases, starving them of the vital nutrients they need, the induced panic response is something to behold. As the brain scrambles for its survival, the resulting pain response has been described by those who have survived the ordeal as akin to having every cell of your muscles and organs set on fire. But what's truly worse is that while the pain is acute enough to keep you alert and fighting, it is not intense enough to make you pass out. It's just enough to keep you awake and alert, and thus prolonging every agonizing moment until you either pass out from oxygen deprivation or reflexively inhale and fill your lungs with fluid. With the presence of an external threat that cannot be fought, the slowly growing internal threat of asphyxiation from CO2 poisoning, and a feedback loop of intensifying, diminishing, and intensifying pain caused by the interactions between the prefrontal cortex and the adrenal response from the endocrine system, death by drowning is conclusively, scientifically, the worst way to die.
Gotta hold your breath.
That was good. That was good. That was really well put together. Really well put together.
Quick question, JL.
Yes.
What was the clip with Statham going through the windshield? I don't think I've seen that.
That's from the Guy Ritchie movie Revolver.
Figured it was Guy Ritchie, but I
Yeah.
definitely have not seen that.
It's a really good film, like really good. One of my
Okay.
favorites.
Yeah, that was brilliant. And you're right. I mean, drowning is like, you know, I have nightmares about drowning, and because
Yes.
you're just surrounded by that. You can't. There's nothing to move away from.
You know?
Get away from, because all around you. You're just in it, and that's it.
Mhm. When we knew what the challenge was, and I was getting DMs, almost everyone mentioned that. And the studies, I know Recker's going crazy because he called it. He knew one of you guys was going to do that one. Definitely, the studies are there. Wow, that was really intense. Who wants to go next? Let's just like, I mean, why bother? But like, okay, I mean, somebody needs to go next. Patrick, or
I'll throw myself down. I'll put my just inexpertise down at the feet of JL's professionalism and fuck it.
What? Don't sell yourself short. People like he's a this is fake humble here. It's
Just rolling.
for him. Yeah, here we go.
Dying adrift in space. Being burned alive, drowning, starvation, dying of a broken heart even. All awful ways to shuffle off the mortal coil. But for me, since I was a little space nerd kid, the idea of expiring all alone adrift in space has been a source of nightmares for me. I mean, it's true enough that we all die alone when it comes down to it, in our own head, no matter the surroundings. So I guess I'm more on about the process of the dying And how alone can you be in a spacesuit, careening through nothingness as your air runs out, knowing that your corpse will forever be tumbling through a void to nowhere? There's actually some dark appeal to it for me. Wondering just how far my husk would make it, the things I could possibly pass by, further than any human has ever gone before, and maybe even getting picked up by some interstellar space junk collector and being displayed in the Andromedan Lost and Found. But this is about death and our worst ways to find it. To meld it to our usual theme briefly, there are plenty of examples in pop culture, including Clooney in Gravity, Tim Robbins in Mission to Mars, Event Horizon, etc., etc. But what I have in mind is a little specific, not so much the manner of death, like the long suffocation inside the spacesuit, but more the utterly unique position one would be in this situation. It's almost impossible to imagine. As an example, let's paint a quick picture and imagine yourself in it. I'm mostly meaning a deeper space situation, not the suffocating in your seat close to Earth, only for your body to eventually burn up in Earth's atmosphere. Isn't terrible enough, but let's imagine something out of gravitational influence. Maybe maintenance on a faraway craft, for example. Things are going okay until you realize your tether has snapped and you are suddenly unable to get a grip, and off you go. It's pretty simple. Imagine that feeling, like being helplessly adrift at sea, only vastly more dire and immediately void of all hope. All fail-safes useless, suits jets out of fuel, and no Coast Guard ever coming. I did take a cursory look at basic spacesuit specs also, so I'm going to figure in a basic constraint. On average, a spacesuit with 2 tanks of oxygen from full would last approximately 6.5 to 8 hours. So that's a long damn time. Imagine that you're watching your craft get smaller and smaller and only the yawning, unfathomable expanse left for you. The only earthbound thing I can remotely compare it to is like possibly the last submersible at great depths. Also a ticking clock situation with little hope, but people in deep sea trouble likely do still harbor some hope of rescue before their air runs out. While being adrift in deeper space leaves you utterly without hope of saving and plenty of time to think about it, which is the worst part of my entry. As long as you have air, you're left to just think and lose your mind, with your final mistake there for you to watch as you go oh so boldly where no man or woman has ever gone. While this could be a nasty, bloody ordeal if I was to include the various depressurization outcomes, etc., I'm just trying to convey the ocean of time it could take to run out of air. Even the hypoxic nightmare at the very end, I can't think of a worse way to go. But also can't imagine a more unprecedented way to go. As your body rots away with the suit, just ponder how far one could actually travel. Imagine the aliens out on a Sunday drive and your body thumps against the windshield. So while I'm asking you, dear viewer, to use your imagination an awful lot, with only a few movies as example for you to derive them from, I think you will agree, dying slowly, drifting into raw nothingness of space is an awful way to check out. Way too much time to think about what's happening and not even an unrealistic glimmer of hope.
Wow.
Nice.
Also
there-
drowning.
Yes.
There's 2 examples there that I recall watching that, and that was in the movie Life, when the final 2 characters that survived, the played by Rebecca Ferguson, her character goes tumbling off into space with no way to get back. And then there was an episode of Love, Death, and Robots on YouTube that had the girl who was stuck outside and had to utilize, and she couldn't get back, obviously, because you're floating out there. And so it showed how you can utilize Newtonian physics to get in the 0G to get back. So she had to like expose her hand to space and break it off, and then throw it and use its force against her to propel her back to the ship.
That was brilliant.
Wow.
It was freaking. I was like, that is so smart. So, but yeah, that was a really, really good example.
Wow. So what do you think, Patrick? You want to flip for it?
No, I'm happy to go if you wanted the last spot. It's your stream. You could headline the
Ah,
show.
you're gonna give me the last spot? Wow. Okay, you go
you
ahead.
could do
I'm
it.
taking it because, like, that's how nervous I am and how poorly I did. I'll take that last spot. Go ahead. Yeah, any advantage I can get at this point, you know. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I'll put
That
it
was-
up as soon as you bring it. Yeah.
I'll get it. So that was a good one, Charlie, as well, though.
Mm.
It's just like the desperation.
A lot of time to think about it.
For anyone who doesn't know, those sounds are actual space sounds that comes right from one of the
Pillars of
astronomy
Creation.
channels,
Yeah.
Pillars of Creation, that they just put that link out, and that was really cool, Charlie, to use that. That's kind of cool. Yeah.
Right. You might need just to wind this back a little bit when it starts because I didn't leave any dead time at the beginning and sometimes it runs over. But right, so my entire thing isn't going to be my video. I'm going to speak just a little bit about it at the end. The video is only 4 minutes long, so I'll just speak a couple of minutes at the end. But it should be being shared about now.
Yep. Okay. So let me get everything ready. I'll put it up. It's ready to start so that you can just put it up. There we go.
And gentlemen,
There we go.
even in the movies.
These guns are pros.
Whoop.
You think when I'm
Why
thinking
did you
about
do that?
it, aim for the bushes?
And these unavoidable deaths really are heartbreaking, especially when they come out of nowhere with no time to react.
Careful, Austin! Watch out!
But sometimes the pain of death can be eased slightly when those who sadly pass leave a little bit of themselves behind for us.
Okay, you got this. Stage left, you idiot!
That's right, something to treasure and hold on to. But this competition tonight really isn't about that. It is about the worst way to die, and not just in movies. You see, before tonight, you may have been indoctrinated to believe that the worst way to die was to have a hole pierced in your head from behind by a superhero's dildo.
Homelander Star Spangled Banner, the Jeep Flounder Pounder, Black Noir Silent Screamer, we be rats. Come. Come on. Yeah,
And as often as we've had nightmares about that exact scenario, the truth is there are far worse ways to go. For example, we may be bored to death by a flat earther's physics lecture.
Mass is identical to weight, but this weight is space weight.
You might be poisoned by accidentally ingesting somebody else's feces.
It's obviously not good to eat other people's poop.
I know, and it's a mistake I can only make so many times. But however I eventually pass, whether it's being curious about how far I can stick my tongue into a live plug socket, or whether it's carrying out an investigation to see how far I can stick my finger up a lion's bottom, I know for a fact that nothing can happen to me that will be worse than death by the Catherine wheel. Now, there are many variations on the way the Catherine wheel could be used to torture and ultimately inflict death on somebody, and this method I'm about to describe is by far my favourite of all of those methods. In this variation, the poor person who's about to be executed, usually a prisoner, is tied to said Catherine wheel, and the Catherine wheel is allowed to rotate. People with huge iron bars will then take it in turns to smash to literal pulp the arms and the legs, starting from the hands and feet and working their way inwards, making sure not to damage any of the major organs so the poor person can remain alive and conscious for as long as possible. Now, once the pulping had been complete, the person seemed to be a hell of a lot more flexible than they were before. So the person would be, how can we say, folded. So the heels of the poor victim touched the back of the head of the poor victim, kind of folded backwards, if you like. Now, at this point, the prisoner or the victim is still alive, folded backwards with pulp for arms and legs, suffering from what I would imagine is some significant discomfort. Now, at this point, the prisoner would be left to die in an ever-building pool of blood, piss, and shit that is building up inside their own body. Another variation of the Catherine wheel, which I will admit is not my favourite, is to beat the arms and legs to a pulp, to the point where they can be used to tie the victim to the spokes of the Catherine wheel, place a Catherine wheel vertically, and then spin them like some kind of windmill for the enjoyment of the onlookers. Another variation is to tie said person to the outside of a large and heavy Catherine wheel and roll it down a steep hill like a tyre, so the person who's already got squished arms and legs then gets a squished torso as the heavy Catherine wheel rolls over them time and time again. And I'll tell you more about it when this video ends, which is now.
Well, okay, so you're going to continue talking, yes?
You have to unmute, you pro.
You have to unmute. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry,
Damn.
I was well into it then.
Oh,
What
yeah.
I said was brilliant, but I forgot what it was. But it would have changed the world.
It's always the way, you know.
It is, isn't it? It is that those first takes. But like the Catherine wheel. What I love about the Catherine wheel is the as far as my limited research, I'm not a historian, but as far as my limited research tells me, there's only one certainty with it, and that is that your arms and legs gets beaten to a pulp and kind of used as almost a rope to fix you to that wheel. And then what happens next is just up to whoever's using the wheel, and they just do whatever they want with it. So all of those things that I said in the video were things that I actually found when I was researching it. But, you know, we were talking about drowning. Well, you could beat someone to a pulp with the Catherine wheel. You could use your arms and legs to tie them to it. And then you could just throw it under the water and let them drown underwater like that. You could literally you could set it on fire and just burn them alive like that. Or just have them there as an ornament.
Where was this used? Are we talking medieval times, witchcraft trials?
Medieval time, and actually not even for witches. It was just punishment for criminals. Really,
it was like standard equipment in all of those torture basements, like all those areas that had torture basements where you went. Yeah. It's kind of a version of the rack, right? It seems.
Yeah,
it's,
it was. I think it was referred to as like braiding on the wheel or breaking wheel or something of that nature. The Catherine wheel as well, and yeah, it was just a method of execution that prolonged suffering, as you know, that it was one of those intriguing style things that they came up with in the medieval ages, like, you know, like the pair of anguish and the shit like that.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad I was muted during your video. You wouldn't have been able to hear it. I'm a definite weirdo. All that stuff was cracking me up, and it shouldn't. Like, especially Deadpool when the guy went into the helicopter.
Oh, what a film that is! My daughter's now just about old enough to watch that, so I watched Deadpool 2 with her last weekend. And, she's 15.
Those were some great. I forgot about some of those. Those were some great clips. Well, do you have more you want to say?
No, I think I'm done. I think that I'll just summarize it by saying that the Catherine. What makes the Catherine wheel horrible is the certainty of what's going to happen is horrible. You know, having your arms beaten and be tied to it, but the uncertainty of just what else the sicko on the driving side of it is going to come up with. You know, there's just
a little bit akin to mine where you have way too much time to think about it.
Yeah.
It's all horrible. So that's my that's my suggestion.
Yeah, very well done. A little bit of dark humor, a little bit of gross, a little bit of like I was laughing so hard like I couldn't contain myself. That was good, but that's wicked. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't want to die like that. All right, here we go, because we want to get this done. All right. Don't laugh, guys. You need to mute. Here we go. Die. That was really difficult for me. Couldn't actually think of the worst way to die. I mean, there's horrible things out there. So, well, in true bear style, I researched. Well, I found an interesting article with at least 5 of them, and let's discuss. The first one was the Hisashi-Oshi radiation incident, a particularly grueling way to go by radiation poisoning. Radiating poisoning happens when you receive a large amount of radiation in one large dose, acute or over time, chronic, With chronic doses of radiation, such as that experienced by American socialite Evan Byers, the biggest risk is of cancer. Byers drank Radiator for many years, a drink containing radium that was touted as a miracle cure. After several years of necking radiation juice like it was going out of fashion, which it was, because of cancer, he began to lose weight, get headaches, and many of his teeth began to fall out. He told his doctor that he lost that toned up feeling, which is a fairly mild way of putting that your bones have begun to crumble, and that Byers' whole upper jaw, excepting 2 front teeth, and most of his lower jaw, had to be removed, and that all the remaining bone tissue of his body was disintegrating, and holes were actually forming in his skull. In acute doses of radiation, death usually comes quicker. Oaki and 2 co-workers had been asked to mix 2.4 kilograms, 5.3 pounds, of enriched uranium with nitric acid. The procedure, of course, went wrong. The uranium reached a critical mass at 10:35 a.m. and set off an uncontrolled chain reaction that emitted radiation for almost 20 hours. The 3 workers who carried out the operation reported seeing a blue flash, the Cherenkov radiation that is emitted during a critical reaction, before collapsing with nausea. They were rescued by colleagues and taken to a local hospital by emergency service. Auschwitz suffered severe radiation burns over most of his body, as well as damage to his internal organs, causing him to lose a lot of blood. On day 58, he went into cardiac arrest due to low oxygen levels, but was revived by medics, with his immune system destroyed and his organs shutting down. Ochi died 83 days after his initial radiation dose of another heart attack. How about hyena attacks? If you're going to get eaten by a large predator, and well, we realize you probably won't have a lot of choice in the matter, try not to make it a hyena. Predators, like lions, will generally try to take down prey quickly, snapping their neck or suffocating it using their jaws on their prey's throat. This isn't out of concern for the animal, but to stop them fighting back. Hyenas have a much more brutal technique, resulting in the animal watching as they are torn apart and eaten. The method with the large game is to chase a herd at a steady pace, though working individually rather than as a pack, keeping up sufficiently close for each pursuer to make repeated bites into legs and hindquarters until one of the hunted animals can take no more and sinks to the ground. The author, D.R. Reservoir, writes in The Carnivores of West Africa, whereupon the whole gathering of hyenas breaks off the hunt, falls upon the victim and devours it, ripping up the belly and starting with the soft internal organs, while the victim is still alive. Attacks on humans are of course rare, so you can avoid this death by merely not being a zebra. Drowning in a toilet. All humor aside, drowning, according to those who have experienced it and come back to tell the tale, generally involves panic and pain, followed by a feeling of peace and tranquility, likely caused by a lack of oxygen. If you die drowning, I would say it's one of the more peaceful ways to go. One person, who of course hadn't tried any other death, is quoted as saying in a 2021 paper, after the worst 15 seconds of your life, of course, they added. You might not feel so peaceful and tranquil, of course, if the substance you are drowning in happens to be poop. This happened to a group of nobles in July of 1184, when they met to resolve a conflict in St. Peter's Church in Yurt. The event organizers did not take into account the weight involved in such a large gathering, where many of the attendees were in heavy chainmail. The floor gave way, plunging most of them into the cesspool below, and 60 to 100 people drowned in monk excrement and pee, with some being fortunate enough, in this instance, to merely die via falling through the infrastructure. Another horrible way, your worms get cancer. Getting killed by cancer is terrible, but spare a thought for the man who died after his parasitic worms got cancer. In 2015, a man from Colombia died after his tapeworm got cancer, and the cancerous cells from the worm spread around his body. The 41-year-old, who was HIV positive, began suffering fatigue and weight loss over several months, as well as a fever and a cough. CT scans showed that his lungs and liver were filled with tumors, and of an unusual kind. They were about 10 times smaller than medics expected. Testing eventually showed that the cancerous cells contained Hymenopteris nana DNA, but the patient died 72 hours after admission. Human disease caused by parasite-derived cancer cells is a novel finding. Multicellular parasites that live in a host tissue generally possess cellular mechanisms for host tissue invasion and immune evasions. These mechanisms could potentially be co-opted during malignant transformation within the host. The host-parasite interaction that we report should stimulate deeper exploration of the relationships between infection and cancer. And the last one, the Nutty Putty Cave Incident. West of Utah Lake, there is a cave with the innocuous name of Nutty Putty. The cave was named after the viscous clay on its walls, which oozed and felt a little like silly putty when it was pushed. People, including scouts, liked to explore the cave with its narrow passages, and this led to several rescues. There were concerns about the cave before John Edward Jones and his brother Josh visited in November 2009. The two were looking for one of the narrow passages in the cave system, known as the birth canal, which it was possible for people to squeeze through. Unfortunately, the two got lost and found themselves in an unmapped part of the cave. John spotted an opening, angled 7 degrees downwards, and began to crawl inside. He believed he had seen an opening on the other side, but was incorrect. And as he wormed his way by inch, he became wedged in there, with no way of getting himself back out of the way he came. He tried to keep going forward, breathing out to try to make his chest fit in the narrow gap, but as he breathed in again, he became trapped for good. For the next day, rescuers tried to retrieve him as he lay face down in the passage. The position he was in put great strain on his heart to pump blood out to the brain, which is usually assisted by gravity. Rescuers tried to get him out by using a pulley system, but eventually it came loose and failed. After 27 hours, John died due to cardiac arrest. A week after his death, the caves were sealed for good, with John still inside, where he remains to this day. That brings me to the worst. The worst. While documenting the loss of humanity, being eaten by a Titan. And if you've seen Attack of Titan, you know what a Titan is. It's a humanistic, grotesque type being, huge, that eats people for no other reason but to eat people, not out of hunger or need, just to eat them. And there was in Attack of Titans a young woman who was actually documenting the loss of humanity, because Titans were just destroying humans everywhere in this anime. And it is long, many seasons, and I don't want to get into the actual details of all of it. I just recommend that if you like anime, watch it. But I don't really need you to watch it to understand how grotesque it would be to be picked up by a huge, giant type, humanesque, monstrous being and munched on for the sheer want of it. No other need. That's my choice. This was a difficult challenge. I'm sure every single way that all of us present is going to be horrific. Good luck voting. Thanks for your time.
Ooh. That story about the caver, that was horrible.
Oh, horrible! I had to play like really relaxing music just to do it. Like it was
Claire
really.
went anime.
I like anime. It's a
I know.
secret. Now it's out. Yeah.
Whenever I think of like anime deaths, and my mind always goes back to Akira, and when in Kaori's death in Akira, when she's like,
Yeah.
that was always pretty gruesome. But
yeah, there's definitely some grosser anime out there, but this one really got to me. This one does because they kill you for not for good, not for evil, not for right or wrong or to win a battle, just cause. Like that's so disgusting. It's not food. It's not anything. It's not even anger. It was just cause. Like okay, I just want to. So.
Icarus brings up Nina from Full Metal Alchemist. Yeah, it's pretty savage.
Absolutely. Yeah, not even for a snack, Sean. Like they don't even need food. Like these Titans don't need food or anything. So it's nothing like that. It's just like, oh yeah, there's a human. Let me crush their skull. Yeah. But anyway, I put the poll up. Very interesting.
Poll is up.
A poll is up, people. We've got like 10 minutes. Thank you for the artistic note there, Fish Nerd. That was like, it's the worst note, actually. I was hiding behind all that soft music. It was very hard to do. It was. But does anybody else have anything they want to say? I mean, there was some pretty good stuff out there,
It was so difficult to try and choose something because we could have all just gone to like the millionth degree and said, right, the worst way to die is to have like millions spiders eating your eyeballs from these, just come up and then somebody's kicking you in the nuts repeatedly with your own foot on,
And it's not like they're subjective. I mean, it's death. It sucks.
Well, yeah, there was the bees because one thing I did think of is in Black Mirror in one of the Black Mirrors where they have the cyber assassin bees that go up your nose and into your brain. Yeah, that was pretty wicked, but that was too close. Like that, just thinking, I shouldn't even mentioned it because just thinking of that episode actually weirds me out and it gets me on this whole creep thing. So I wasn't going to put it in the video, but then JL had ants crawling on people's faces. The bees were there in the hat. And
also,
like,
JL,
oh
what was
God.
the bees on Nicolas Cage's face?
Yeah, he dies. Yeah.
Yeah, that was from The Wicker Man.
The Wicker Man.
Now I remember. Okay.
Not the bees. And that scene is so long and so protracted and so silly because he's just like and you can obviously tell it's like, come on guys, it looks bad. It's just his overreaction to, and then the bees are just kind of like lazily there like, we're bees.
I know JL will remember this. What about the Faces of Death VHSs?
Oh yes, I recall Faces of Death. Yes.
Ugh.
Okay.
I have to admit, and I put the message in the private chat. I have to admit that Charlie's reminded me of the medieval torture, because there's so many good like medieval tortures out there. You got, stuff like freaking the thumb screws, and like I've said, the Pear of Anguish, and then of course, but like I think the worst one that I ever read about was medieval rat torture, and that was when they trap a rat. They basically put
Game
a rat.
of Thrones showed it.
Yeah, they put a rat like on your stomach, and then they trap it underneath like a pot, and then they strap it down so it can't escape, and then they put hot coals on top of it so that the rat will try to, and the rat tries to escape the heat, so it has nowhere to go but through you.
Oh, it eats its way through
So
you
it
to
eats-
get
so it's-
away?
To get away.
Ew!
Yeah, it's freaking.
Oh!
It's freaking horrible.
God.
And it's painful. It's painful, but the way it's done, because of the damage the rat does, death is usually actually really, really quick, because the rat will generally hit your hepatic vein, and then you bleed out in moments, because they go clean through your liver. It'll literally chew its way through your liver to get there, because they put it right over your abdomen. And so as it's chewing through, it hits your liver, severs your hepatic vein, and then you just go out in moments.
I never even heard of it before Game of Thrones.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, in the movie Sinister 2, one of the home movies in Sinister 2 showed somebody doing that to a bunch of people.
God, to think that up. Oh my God.
That was a awful way, Rocket Couch. Remember in Alien, like that guy? I used that one for Yeah, the alien. Yeah, well, that's the pregnant woman. I forgot that one. Yeah. That's horrible. JL and Patrick, thank you very much for not using the rat trying to get away while eating its way out of you. I'm glad we didn't have that visual today, but now it's in my head. So I don't know why I'm thanking you. But it looks like everyone has voted because the number of live people and the number in the poll is there. And it looks like Charlie Welsh stole it with the space, adrift in space. It looks like Charlie is the winner again.
In fairness, it is also drowning. I mean, it really is.
You know, I
Without
was
the water.
surprised. All three of us had some kind of drowning in there because, like, and actually, Patrick's could be drowning too if you throw that wheel in the water. Like, yeah, definitely, he's right.
Has
Yeah,
anybody
it could
here been close to drowning? Because I
have.
have.
I have.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
God. I was very stupid. I was in Florida swimming at about midnight, about 150 yards away from the beach, and something large slammed into my legs so hard that my knees bruised. I'm talking, you could hear my knees hit underwater. Pow! And I felt this giant body go down my leg, and I almost drowned just trying to swim back. And God, it was traumatic. Oh my God.
It was same thing, only opposite ocean, Pacific Ocean, and I was about 11 and was caught by a riptide. And the initial instinct, while I'd been trained how to deal with that if that happens. And La Jolla Shores, where we were at, is notorious for riptides. And so is it typically you can kind of see them coming if you know what you're looking for. But I happened to be out and happened to swim right into one. And initially, the instinct is to fight it and to try to get back to shore as fast as possible, which is the opposite of what you're supposed to do. And so, I realized then when I went down and realized I wasn't making any progress, I realized I needed to come up and then go with it. And then that's when things got easier. And I actually didn't even have to go up that far in order to get out of it and come back. So it was just, but being so young and never having the minute you feel the ocean like grab you. It's like it's shocking. Yeah, it's shocking how powerful it is.
Especially since it's going the opposite way you visually see, because you see the waves like all going and the current going one way. And a riptide actually pulls you all the way under, and it's an opposite current going, and you can't even fight it. That's the same experience I had, living at the shore. It happened very young, and I didn't really go to the beach much after that.
I've never even been in a pool.
I choose pools. I don't like hot sand and all of that. I'm, fair. I burn really easy, so I just go to the pool from now on. Yeah.
The only time in the ocean I've ever been more scared, and it was the riptide was one thing, but now you know what to expect, so you know how to deal with it once you've been through it. But the only time I've ever been more scared was in Hawaii, and that was off the shores of Hananauma. And so I was in the water, and I was about, I would say, probably 40 yards offshore, and swimming parallel to the actual shoreline. When all of a sudden the shark horns went off, and they started announcing that a shark had spotted in the water. And I was like, and
so
what I
realized, what I dealt with.
Did you hear Did you hear the music? Did you guys hear the music in the background? Did you hear the dun dun dun? Do I have enough time? Is it getting louder?
In my ear. That's what I heard.
Someone had yelled that there was a hammerhead that was in the water that was spotted close to shore. So I knew where I was like, oh great, the hammerhead is somewhere between me and the shore. Okay, so I'm just going to very gently, very calmly, doggy, take my ass back in, just kind of like, just looking around. I didn't see it. I don't know where it went, but when you're in the ocean and you're a good distance offshore, and all of a sudden, because they have siren, like almost like weather sirens that go, and then they announce shark, and then you're like,
screw that,
huh? And you're like, okay.
Yeah,
and it's even better now. They're using drones for that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I think that, Patrick, I want to give you extra points for the research, though. You always pull something out that I would never think of, and did all that research on that wheel.
Well, I did some practical as well, you know.
Well, you had
but
me
there's not many
cracking up.
people living on my
Yeah.
street as there was. I I put it into action. No.
Okay, so so it was like right on your mind, right? Like because you had
Practical
whipped the
research,
wheel
absolutely.
out, you were getting it all ready to use, you know, and everything. So okay, I get it. No, but that was it. Charlie, it does look like even though I left it up for a little bit, it does look like you're still the winner as we're coming out to wrap this up. JL is next right after this with Week in Horror that was postponed from last night to a storm, right, JL? So
Yeah.
I just dropped the link for everyone if you want to go over there afterwards. But you know, we're going to cut this one short so he can go to his
He does a
stream.
great job, folks. If you haven't seen it,
This was a lot of fun. I hope. Are we all coming back next week, Patrick, on your channel?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm all
Yeah, and we will try to think of something else that doesn't terrorize me as much, guys. Like maybe. Okay. No.
Congrats,
Now that I
Charlie.
said that,
Thank
there's
you.
probably going to be most gruesome death by whatever or something. I don't know. But it was good. Congratulations, Charlie. It was a good one. It is a horrific way to die. And it is my first instinct was alone. I think I said that, right, JL?
Can't get more alone than space.
First thing I came up with.
If I was in that situation, like legit, like you know, you're in there. The worst part of it is it's one of two ways. If you're floating in space, you're just like, okay, where am I gonna go? So there's that way, or you're tumbling through space. That's the worst.
You can't stop it.
Because the only thing that's going to act on you is the inertia of your act on your blood is the inertia of your body, and as you're tumbling, the inertia is going to send the blood to your brain, and eventually you're going to pass out. You know, and
hopefully,
considering you know, typically, you know, if you run out of oxygen, depending on how many hours they have, it could be like 16 hours, maybe 8 to 16 hours. But the problem is that the blood rushing to your brain from the inertia of you tumbling is going to make you pass out first. So you're not going to be awake for when you actually go. Now, if you're actually just floating, like super, like you know, like I'm flying through space. If you're doing that, then it's just going to be that you in that position, you know, until you expire, till you either run out of air or you die of dehydration, which will usually take you know about in that situation probably 36 hours. So 36 to 72 hours. So at that point, you just decompress because the decompression will kill you in a heartbeat. And you literally probably won't even feel it because you'll pass out. You'll immediately be rendered unconscious from the lack of oxygen because the oxygen will be ripped out of your basically every orifice that's open will just pull the oxygen clean out of you as you decompress. So you literally just go, and you'll just be rendered unconscious and then you'll just go. So
yeah, I looked into different parts how that went, but just went with the hypothesis that you do have air and your suit's intact. And just imagine what JL just said. If you're just Supermaning it, you could either be facing your craft and possibly even Earth, and that's torture enough, or you could be turned around the other way and you see nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it's like you know, I've seen it in movies like Sunshine when he actually like took his helmet off. When he took his helmet off, he survived. He survived like moments, but he would not have experienced like when space essentially will it won't like you won't freeze, but you'll freeze dry.
Yeah.
As all of the moisture in your body like evaporates, like instantaneously evaporates from the decompression effort. So you basically kind of like freeze dry, and that happens like in milliseconds how fast it occurs because the decompression is so extreme. And then of course all your blood boils and all the oxygen just flies out of you. It's almost instantaneous. So
I also tried to figure out how long it would take for like the suit / corpse to disincorporate and not be there. I mean, just to think about
that would take forever because the only bacteria working on you to like essentially you're in this hermetically sealed environment. So you die, and then of course if you expose yourself to space, you'll just be freeze dried. You'll literally mummify. Yep. And as long as you don't run into anything, you'll just be like this mummified corpse. And especially if you leave the suit on, you'll die, and then you'll just desiccate. And
I entertain the idea of what if something found me.
It's like this husk of a human just passing
The
on.
hell is that?
like a spacefaring Egyptian mummy. So
Exactly. Oh yeah. Well, we know what's coming up on your channel, JL, and Patrick, you got anything coming up in the next week?
Yeah, I've got something coming up tomorrow. Actually, I meant to get it finished today on Sadiq Khan and some legendary stuff he's been pulling out to try and stop crime in London. It's not as effective as a rice paper fire guard, really, but I just thought I'd have a look at it for a bit of a laugh.
Oh yeah, I do love this. I like when you have a go at him. The beginning of yours today, I was actually laughing too hard. I'm glad I was muted. Nobody would have been able to hear anything. I don't know what it is about splat deaths that I find funny. I think it was because I watched too many cartoons, too many Coyote and Roadrunner stuff, like when I was younger, like or something. I don't know. I just think that it just cracks me up. But on that.
Roadrunner.
On that, I think we're gonna wrap up. You'll see me on the weekend as usual. What the F on the weekend, and then over on the shows, and then back again for True Crime on the week. And JL over there at Weekend Horror, and what he's got coming up on Bridge the Divide. Probably some interesting conversation, and Patrick will keep you rolling.
The Bridge to the Divide stuff's just getting better each week.
It is, yeah.
Thank
and
you, appreciate that.
Patrick's growing, and I like that snark, Patrick. Keep it going. Like that's my morning coffee. I love it. I just love that stuff. Thanks everybody who came and voted. We can't do it without you. Please come back next week. I hope you had fun. This one was I don't know, but winner is Charlie, hands down, still at 35% of the vote. And looks like everybody did vote. So there you go. And thank you, Patrick, for not using 10 of your socks at the end to turn it. I give you good credit. I give you good credit. I know that was hard. You're a good man. We'll see you all. We'll see you all next week.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
See you later.